Hey everyone, it's Erin Sorensen with Hail Varsity, and I am joined by our recruiting analyst, Greg Smith, for another week of your recruiting question of the week. Greg, how are you?
I am doing well. I am currently kind of praying for LeBron James's ankle.
Oh,
That's on a totally side note because he's possibly going to miss multiple weeks, and I'm like nervous even talking about that. I don't want to talk about that. That's not why we're here.
right. Now, if anyone isn't familiar, you are a Lakers fan, so that would make a lot of sense. But obviously, just for LeBron's own health and well-being, fingers crossed, knock on wood, that he's all right. But like you said, people aren't here to listen to us talk about the NBA or the Lakers or LeBron James, but we certainly can if people want to ask questions about that. We are here to answer another question, which, if you are brand new here, we started this series a few weeks ago. Honestly, now almost a month and a half ago. It seems like you all like it because you continue to ask questions, you engage on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, which we appreciate. So this week, the question comes from Daniel. He DM'd Greg and asked, each year, there seems to be a state that the Huskers are focusing on more than most. Are there any emerging states to watch for this cycle? Now, Greg, I have a little bit of an idea because you've talked about this in your recruiting notebook. So I'm curious to hear more from you. Are there emerging states to watch for the 2022 class?
There are. I'm more interested to hear what you think versus what, like, based on what I've written. But there are. I would say that as a caveat, under this staff, Florida is always number one. Like, it's always going to be that way with this staff, given the amount of ties that they have to that. You can go through Scott Frost being the head coach at UCF, Travis Fisher and Sean Beckton spending a good amount of time there as well. Just kind of the southern flavor to their staff in that southeast region. This staff will always focus on Florida. That being said, what comes after that has been kind of a rotation under this staff, and that you've had kind of a mixture and a jockeying between Texas and California for kind of the next two states that have the most offers out. But the state that has become, well, there's two states that have become even more important as we move along here throughout Frost's tenure. Georgia, which Sean Beckton has done a terrific job of kind of spearheading there, and he's helped them to get a lot of traction in the state of Georgia. And I think that that is the ultimate answer. But then the dark horse here is also Missouri, which is a state that I feel like, as long as I've been covering Nebraska football, we've been talking about Missouri being a state that Nebraska needs to get into more, even before they got into the Big Ten. And the talent in the state, especially in St. Louis and now in Kansas City, has just continued to explode. But I think that the ultimate answer here is Georgia, because of their, I think Georgia is actually number two in overall offers right now with 40 for the class of 2022. And it just seems like Nebraska's pitch is really resonating with players in that state.
I was going to say Missouri as one
Yeah.
from having read some of the things that you've shared. Now, you actually did have an interview with a Kansas City player over the weekend, wide receiver. I hope I'm going to say his last name, Quentin Conley. Is that
That's
correct?
correct. Yep.
So, like I said, I having read some of your work, which if people aren't a subscriber to Hail Varsity, I recommend it. You can go subscribe right now at hailvarsity.com. There's a little subscribe tab up in the right corner, and little like insider tip if you'd like to try your first month free, which also includes the magazine. So it's not only website, it's also the magazine, which gets delivered right to your door. You can use code TRYHV. That's TRYHV, and you get your first month for only $1. So little insider plug if you're watching this and you want to go read say this story with Quentin Conley, but he's one that the Huskers have been reaching out to. So who are some of these Missouri kids athletes that people should maybe keep an eye on?
Yeah, it's interesting. Quentin Conley, like you mentioned, you said they've been reaching out to him for a while now. If you go back to 2 years ago now, when visits were allowed, like, and Quentin Conley was a sophomore then, like, Nebraska was hosting him for unofficial visits then. Like, that's how long that they've really been on him. He's a 6'5", 205 pound, he told me last week, wide receiver who Nebraska likes to fit on the outside. Jason Essex is another Kansas City wide receiver to keep an eye on. Armand Mimbu, or Mimbao, I don't know 100% on that one, from Lee Summit North, the same high school as you remember one time commit from a couple of years ago. was also went to that school. He's an offensive guard. Armand is, and then DJ Wesolak. He is a weak side defensive end is what people list him at, but he could probably play either outside linebacker or defensive end. Like there's just a number of guys. Ikena Izigu. These names are tough for me today. Is another outside linebacker from Missouri that the team likes a lot. So there are just a number of players in Missouri, and increasingly in Kansas City, which is spearheaded by Ryan Held, who's from Kansas City as well, which also helps because that always comes up when I talk to these kids. And you know how Ryan Held recruits really hard. So that helps Nebraska. But like Kansas City has really become a big area of focus for Nebraska staff.
And when we talk about, that 500-mile radius too, I think sometimes we get really hung up on inside the state of Nebraska, in-state recruits, but these local area recruits, when you think of Kansas City, St. Louis, Des Moines, different areas in South Dakota, when you can kind of create this like bubble around Nebraska, it definitely opens up that pipeline quite a bit more. Because like I said, I think sometimes the focus gets to be on in-state, which is important, but there's also this talent all around. And I think seeing some of that like attention, especially as we come out of what potentially looks like the end of this dead period in June, getting kids who are more local is going to be easier, especially with some of these camps and traveling and everything else. So I guess I'm trying to say I'm not surprised that there's an emphasis on more local recruiting, if you will. And certainly by doing that, it should help even in the future when traveling is more normal, everything else, because at least you have a good, like I said, a good pipeline around you that you can pull from.
Yeah, Kansas is another state that we should mention as well. Colorado has kind of been hit or miss too, but it just makes a lot of sense for Nebraska to, especially, and I like that you mentioned when the dead period is lifted. It's good. We'll probably talk about a lot more about this. It will be heavily, like highly competitive to get kids to campuses, right? Because they've all been waiting, and so it's going to be really tough. And so what could end up happening is the guys that are close are going to be able to drive to your campus and take those visits a little bit easier. So that will end up playing a factor down the road as well.
Now, this is a topic that I'm sure, Greg, you have more thoughts on, more you can share. And if people feel that way, the good news is there is more that they can read from you later today, right?
There will be more tonight at 6 o'clock in the recruiting notebook, which should be appointment reading every day. You should bookmark it, but I will talk more about this topic about the emerging states for the 2022 class tonight.
Yes. So if you're ever like Greg said, it's appointment reading. Just put it on your calendar now, Sunday through Thursdays at 6 p.m. Central. The recruiting notebook goes live at hailvarsity.com. On Mondays, Greg does a little bit of a deeper dive on this very topic that we talk about in these videos. So make sure you come back. Just bookmark hailvarsity.com while you're there. And if you have a question for next week, because we do take your questions, you can DM Greg. As you've seen in some of these videos, he takes suggestions via DM. You can just tweet at him at Greg Smith HV or at Hail Varsity. You can leave the comments right here below this video right now, or you can just start a conversation, which some of you have done, which we also appreciate. But thank you for, tuning in for another week. It's like you said, with the dead period getting close to being lifted, I'm guessing a lot of you have questions on that. So if you do, please let us know. That's what we're here for. Greg is the expert. Let's just continue to pick his brain and see what knowledge he can provide for us before that June date comes along. Greg, any final words before I let you go?
No, I think that we summed it up well.
No.
And so make sure you check out the notebook tonight for more expanded thoughts. But it's a really good topic. This is a fun one because it changes every year, it seems like.
I agree. Well, if you haven't already, head over to hailvarsity.com or go follow Greg at Greg Smith HV at hailvarsity on Twitter, and we will talk to you next week and all week long until then. So thank you as always. We will see you later.
Thank you.